So I knew D4vd before the fame. He used to post about God all the time. Then out of nowhere, he signed his deal, and then he kind of just like stopped for a while. And then he kind of just switched up his whole like style. He went from like a normal looking guy, and then he like went all like emo and weird in LA and crap. It's got to be like some type of ritual type thing because this music industry is very weird.
The funeral that shocked everyone. It's been 28 days since they found her body. A 14-year-old girl, gone far too soon, her life ending in the most chilling way imaginable, inside the trunk of a pop star's Tesla. And today, her family finally laid her to rest. But as Celeste's casket was lowered into the ground, surrounded by crying relatives and a sea of white flowers, one question echoed louder than the funeral hymns themselves. Why is there still no justice? The air that day felt heavy. People clutched each other, whispering prayers, but beneath every tear was anger, the kind of rage that comes from knowing the truth is still hiding. Cameras caught the moment her mother's knees gave out beside the coffin, and you could almost feel the collective heartbreak of everyone who ever loved this little girl. But what makes this story unbearable isn't just the tragedy of her death. It's the silence that followed. The unanswered questions, the missing evidence, the strange coincidences, and the disturbing possibility that someone powerful may be walking free. Because they know how to play the system. As the world watched that funeral footage circulate online, one question took over social media. How can a pop star known for fame, luxury, and influence be connected to a teenage girl found lifeless in his car, and yet still not face a single charge? In this video, we're going to dive deep into everything the media isn't telling you, from the missing timeline to the mysteriously deferred autopsy to the lawyer who's defended some of Hollywood's darkest secrets. Because what happened to Celeste isn't just a story about a singer and a fan, it's a story about power, silence, and the way truth gets buried right beside the victims. But before we get there, let's start where it all began, with the car that held more secrets than anyone expected.
The funeral was held at Queen of Heaven Cemetery and Mortuary in Rowland Heights. Law enforcement believe Celeste had been passed for a few weeks before her remains were found. Reports indicated that some in David's circle believe that she was 19, though official sources confirmed she was only 14.
The body in the Tesla. It all started with an abandoned car. A sleek black Tesla sitting on a quiet street in Los Angeles. Ticketed twice, ignored for weeks, collecting dust under the California sun. Neighbors assumed someone had moved out or gone on tour. But what no one realized was that there was someone inside. When the car was finally impounded, police officers made a discovery so disturbing it froze everyone on scene. In the trunk was the decomposed body of 14-year-old Celeste, a child, hidden for weeks inside a vehicle registered to one of pop music's most recognizable faces, David, the platinum-selling singer who had once been celebrated for his charm, his voice, and his influence. Reports say the smell was what gave it away first. Workers at the impound lot noticed a strange odor, one that intensified as they opened the back. They thought it might have been a dead animal, until they saw what it really was. Celeste's body was unrecognizable, her features blurred by decay. Detectives quickly confirmed the car belonged to David. But what shocked investigators even more was where the vehicle had been left, not miles away in some hidden warehouse, not dumped in a remote desert, but on a residential street, just blocks from David's own home. At first, no one wanted to believe it. Social media exploded. Fans said it was fake news, a setup, an elaborate smear campaign. But as hours turned into days, the evidence piled up. Registration papers, witness accounts, and surveillance that placed the Tesla exactly where Celeste was last seen. How long had she been in that car? Why was no one looking for her sooner? And why was there no official statement from David, the one man who could explain everything? The deeper police dug, the stranger it got. Phone data, social media logs, and traffic citations painted a timeline that didn't make sense. Celeste had vanished months earlier, and yet somehow her body was only now being discovered. in a car tied directly to the man she once idolized. By the time word spread across Hollywood, it was too late for speculation. The headlines were brutal. Teen girl found dead in singer's car. Pop star under fire after body discovery. But as the story gained attention, so did the excuses. Vague statements, media spin, and silence from the LAPD. Because if this was really as simple as it looked, why wasn't anyone in handcuffs? As the world tried to piece together the timeline, one thing became clear. This wasn't just a tragic coincidence. It was the beginning of something far darker, and the first cracks in the official story would come from the one place authorities couldn't control: the autopsy room.
This case has a lot of people rattled. Why was a minor's body left in such a manner? For the community and for Celeste's loved ones, today's funeral is a moment of mourning, but also a reminder of the urgency for justice. Celeste Rivas Hernandez will now rest in peace, but her memory continues to haunt us.
The autopsy. No one trusts when the results finally came in, people expected answers. Instead, what they got was a single word: deferred. That's how the autopsy report on Celeste's body was labeled. No clear cause of death, no explanation, just deferred. To the public, that word meant delay. But to those following the case, it meant something far more chilling: uncertainty. Authorities claimed that her body was too decomposed to determine exactly how she died. Weeks, maybe months inside a sealed Tesla trunk had erased critical evidence. But skeptics weren't buying it. Because in 2025, with modern forensics, how could an autopsy on such a high-profile case come back as inconclusive? People began to whisper, was it incompetence or interference? The few details released only made things murkier. Officials confirmed she wasn't pregnant and that she'd been dead for weeks. But how many weeks? No one would say. That gap between what they knew and what they admitted became the fuel for online theories. Some pointed out the funeral came shockingly fast. Others questioned why the family used a full-sized casket for a body that, according to reports, was in an advanced state of decay. The speculation was relentless. Was there something in that coffin authorities didn't want the public to see? Then came the whispers about evidence being mishandled, rumors that investigators hadn't even opened the vehicle immediately after impound, that boxes of potential evidence, clothing, tech devices, biological material were seen being hauled away without proper sealing or labeling. And just like that, the investigation began to feel off. Online forums filled with questions no one could answer. How did a pop star's car go unnoticed for weeks? Why wasn't he questioned immediately? And most importantly, if Celeste's death wasn't ruled a homicide, did that mean no one was ever going to be held responsible? People wanted justice. Instead, they got silence. Even her family seemed trapped in confusion, grieving, emotional, but eerily quiet about what came next. Were they told something privately? Were they pressured to stay silent? It felt as though the truth itself had been buried right alongside Celeste. The deferred report didn't close the case. It cracked it wide open. Because if the official story couldn't tell people what happened to her, then maybe the timeline, the digital breadcrumbs, the missing months, could. And that's where the next twist begins. With a private investigator who uncovered something the police didn't: a missing year and a trail of lies. The Investigator and the Missing Timeline. While officials fumbled their reports, one man refused to let the story die. His name is Steve, better known online as SF Investigates, a private investigator with a reputation for chasing the cases that everyone else avoids. And this time, his target was David. Steve started digging through what little information the LAPD had released: vehicle logs, parking citations, social media timestamps, anything that could piece together the last few months of Celeste's life. And what he found didn't add up. According to Steve, there's no verified trace of Celeste after early 2025. Not on social media, not in phone data, not in public sightings. The last time anyone could confidently place her alive was months before the Tesla was towed away and impounded. So if she disappeared early in the year, why was the car still being ticketed all summer long? Why did it take until late 2025 for anyone to find her body? Steve published part of his findings in a now viral tweet. The Tesla's registration expired in January 2025. It was ticketed twice that year, in Hollywood, then nothing until impound. He also hinted that early reports from Celeste's own relatives might have been false. Some family members claimed they'd messaged her as late as July, but Steve's analysis suggested those interactions never actually happened. Whether that's accidental or intentional, he said, "I'm not sure." But there's no proof she was alive past the spring. That revelation shook the timeline completely. Because if Celeste had been gone for months, that meant someone had access to the Tesla long after her death. Someone who knew it was there. Someone who didn't say a word. In one of his updates, Steve mentioned another chilling detail. Inside the Tesla, oxygen levels were almost non-existent, and since the trunk was sealed, it created a kind of airtight chamber, one that slowed decomposition. That meant Celeste's body could have been there far longer than investigators wanted to admit. If true, it would mean the official story wasn't just incomplete, it was impossible. And as Steve's findings spread online, people began asking what law enforcement hadn't. Why didn't the police trace the car's location sooner? Why didn't anyone connect it to a missing teen already associated with the owner? And most importantly, how could a pop star's vehicle be sitting unattended in a public street for months without a single search? Even those defending David started to go quiet, because each new discovery painted a darker picture, one that looked less like an accident and more like a cover-up. And just as the world started demanding accountability, another bombshell hit. The police records, dozens of calls from Celeste's home, painting a picture of chaos and neglect that had been ignored for years. That's where this story takes its next disturbing turn. Inside the home she tried to escape, and the system that never came to save her. The pop star's legal power and media silence. When investigators confirmed that the Tesla belonged to David, people expected chaos. Flashing headlines, arrests, cameras crowding his driveway. But instead, there was quiet. Eerie, suffocating quiet. Within 48 hours, David had hired one of Hollywood's most feared defense attorneys, Blair Burke. Her name alone sent shockwaves through social media. This was the woman who had defended Harvey Weinstein, Mel Gibson, Kanye West, and Lindsay Lohan. A legal juggernaut known for one thing, keeping celebrities out of handcuffs. And just like that, the story began to change. Suddenly, headlines that once screamed pop star linked to teen's death softened into "Authorities find no direct evidence." Articles that once demanded answers started quoting unnamed sources close to David. It was as if someone had flipped a switch, and the media went from accusing to apologizing. The question is, why? Because behind the scenes, Burke's strategy was already in motion. She made sure her client stayed silent. No statements, no interviews, not even a social media post. Every move was calculated. Meanwhile, she fed the press just enough language to create doubt. Phrases like "no official suspect," "deferred autopsy," and "lack of criminal culpability." Subtle, but powerful. And it worked. By the time most networks revisited the case, the tone had shifted completely, from horror to hesitation. Some reporters even started calling it a tragic misunderstanding. But online, people weren't buying it. Because if David had nothing to hide, why did his team need the same lawyer who built her career defending men accused of crimes against women? Whispers began circulating that TMZ's own founder, Harvey, had suddenly gone silent on the story. During a live stream, Harvey, who's known for teasing exclusive scoops, hinted that this case was different, that people he called friendly sources had stopped answering his calls. "It's weird," he said. "They're all being so closed-lipped. I've never seen this before." But viewers noticed something he didn't mention, that Harvey and Blair Burke are old friends. Vacation photos, mutual fundraisers, even holiday parties together. And suddenly, his silence made a lot more sense. Because when the lawyer protecting the pop star also happens to be close friends with the media gatekeepers who shape the narrative, you don't just control the courtroom, you control the story. As the weeks passed, fans started to notice something else. David was still online. Not hiding in fear, not grieving, not even pretending to stay offline out of respect. He was quietly active, following new TikTok accounts, liking posts, living life. Meanwhile, the public's outrage turned into obsession. If the justice system wouldn't give them answers, they'd find their own. People began tracking his every move, digging into deleted posts, Discord logs, and rumored connections that led to something even darker. Because if the law couldn't touch him, maybe the truth could. And that's where this story starts spiraling out of control, when thousands of people online decide they won't stop until Celeste's ghost gets justice. The public outrage and theories that won't die by now, the official investigation had gone quiet, but the internet hadn't. If anything, it had exploded. Everywhere you looked, people were talking about Celeste. Reddit threads dissected her last known messages, YouTube videos broke down footage from the funeral frame by frame, and TikTok was filled with theories so detailed they started to feel more like digital detective work than speculation. Some believed David had help. Others were convinced the Tesla wasn't just a car, it was a storage site, a holding place. And then there were the ones who thought the truth was even worse, that Celeste had been lured, manipulated, and silenced long before the public even knew her name. One theory claimed her disappearance went unnoticed because she'd been labeled a runaway, and by the time the authorities cared, it was already too late. Another pointed to the Tesla's internal footage system, suggesting that crucial video data had been deleted or corrupted during impound, a claim that Tesla themselves refused to comment on. But the theory that gained the most traction was the simplest. Someone powerful was making sure David walked free. The digital evidence, the timing of the media blackout, the sudden shift in tone from news outlets, everything felt too coordinated. Even longtime fans of the singer began turning on him. Why is he following people on TikTok if he's under investigation? One user wrote. Why hasn't the LAPD named anyone a suspect? Another asked. And then, things got darker. Someone noticed that Celeste's old Discord profile had changed. The bio once contained the letters KY, a disturbing abbreviation for kill yourself. Days later, it was gone entirely. That single edit sent the internet spiraling. Who logged in? Who had access to her account? And more importantly, was someone trying to erase her final digital footprint? The deeper people searched, the more connections they found between David, his legal team, and major media executives. Photos resurfaced of him at industry parties, rubbing shoulders with the same people now staying silent. A few even connected the dots back to Harvey, claiming he'd privately warned reporters not to jump to conclusions about David's involvement. At this point, the public didn't trust anyone. Not the police, not the press, not the justice system. Comment sections became battlegrounds, one side mourning Celeste and demanding justice, the other accusing her family of negligence or chasing clout. It was chaos, toxic, emotional, and exactly what happens when truth is replaced with silence. But even in the noise, there was one thing no one could ignore. Every piece of the puzzle, every rumor, every inconsistency pointed back to the same car, the same street, the same man. And as public anger reached its boiling point, whispers began circulating that an arrest might finally be coming. Private investigators hinted at DNA, at Tesla surveillance, at evidence too sensitive to release. The internet held its breath, because if that day ever came, the world wouldn't just be watching a pop star fall, they'd be watching a whole system get exposed. Justice delayed or buried forever. Celeste's grave is quiet now. The cameras are gone, the crowds have moved on, and the headlines that once screamed her name have faded from the front page. But the silence feels wrong, because silence isn't peace, it's pressure. The kind that builds when truth is being buried deeper than the victim ever was. Her family visits the cemetery often. They bring flowers, they light candles, and they whisper the same questions the world still hasn't answered. Why her? Why no justice? And why does it feel like everyone's trying to forget? The official story says investigators are still working on it. But people aren't stupid. They've seen this before. When money talks louder than justice, and fame becomes a shield instead of a spotlight. Every time a new rumor surfaces, every time a reporter tries to dig deeper, the noise dies down again, as if someone, somewhere, keeps hitting mute. But the internet doesn't forget. Celeste's face, her story, is archived in every video, every comment thread, every post that refused to be deleted. And no matter how much they try to move on, people still feel that chill every time her name trends again. Because this wasn't just a tragedy, it was a warning. A warning about how easily innocence can disappear, how fast justice can stall when lawyers rewrite the narrative, and how powerful people use silence as their best defense, Maybe the truth is still out there, locked behind sealed reports, lost footage, or deleted accounts. Or maybe it's already known and buried. But one thing is certain: justice can be delayed, hidden, even denied. But it cannot be buried forever. Because as long as people keep asking questions, as long as her story keeps haunting those who tried to erase it, Celeste will never really be gone. Soft outro tone. Until the truth comes out, may she rest, not in silence, but in power.